Voters went out. They voted. They wanted to make sure who's the mayor of the city of Youngstown, and that was Jamel Tito Brown. I'm excited about being the mayor of this great city for the next 4 years. But what saddens me more than anything is now that we've wasted taxpayers' dollars, not just from the prosecutor side, but the Board of Elections side, and me personally. Now I had to go out and get my own personal attorney, which now I need to ask, who's going to pay for that? You know, I mean, to be honest with you. And the thing that I stake my claim to more than anything, for the last 13 years, I've been an elected official, board of the Youngstown City School Board, 3rd Ward City Councilman, and President of City Council. And through all those elections, I've not won all the time, but whenever I lose, I would just dust myself off, turn back around, and do it again if I thought that was necessary. But being a cheat, I've never been that. I tell you time and time again, I'm a competitor. I compete. Now, if you can't compete with what's going on, get better at what you're doing. It saddens me to see today the news conference, the press conference. I thought I would see a glimmer of hope and light to unify this community, but all I heard was divisiveness. I don't want to divide this community. I want to bring and unite this community of Youngstown together. And to be the mayor, I'll be the mayor for everyone. If you voted for me, if you didn't vote for me. Let's take today, leave it January 31st, let's leave this election and say, you know what, Jamel Tito Brown's the mayor of the city of Youngstown. Let's move Youngstown forward. I want to work with everyone. Basha, I'll work with you. I'll work with everyone on city council. I want to make sure the city that I love is more united and during my administration than any time before. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we get in a little bit of the technical issues. I was dismayed to hear Mr. McKinney's allegations as he was up there describing all of the irregularities that he believes occurred. My thought was, well, then don't dismiss the lawsuit. Let's go forward and air it out in open court. But Mr. McKinney chose not to do that, so I feel compelled to address what he addressed publicly. First off, I believe that this last election, and after spending countless hours with Attorney Zaratek, Attorney Stratford, and Attorney Sharon Hackett, going through this election process, I am firmly convinced that it was a fair and honest election. I am also firmly convinced that Mr. McKinney, and I tend to believe that he also became convinced of that, was not going to win his lawsuit. So he dropped it. But I can't tell you what's in his mind. First off, there were not numerous irregularities. I do not believe that the public, the general public, other than maybe some conspiracy theorists, believe that there is rampant fraud or irregularities in this Board of Elections. I also do not believe, and I'm certain, in fact, that it is not impossible to know the results. It is possible to know the results. This Board of Elections made it possible. And behind me, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, these are the documents, if you'll move please. These are the documents that were provided to Mr. McKinney and members of his team. Basil, you're one of them. You were provided some of these documents. And his counsel. So to be told that we weren't cooperating, I found patently offensive when I read the complaint. Secondly, the double counting of votes that he alleged, they were soiled ballots. Soiled ballots is where a voter comes in and marks their ballot and then changes their mind and said, I'm not going to vote for Mr. Brown, I'm going to vote for Mr. McKinney. Can I have a different ballot, a new ballot? That's called a soiled ballot. And they were listed in the complaint. The Board of Elections has those soiled ballots, and they would have been produced at trial tomorrow. I have no idea where the discovery of uncounted ballots are. That was not in the complaint. I have no idea what they're talking about, and I don't think anybody in this room does. Relatives of candidates, there might have been one relative of a candidate for Board of Education. To my knowledge, that is not against the law, but we are going to check it, aren't we, ladies? That's right. And if it is improper, it won't happen again. That I assure you. I don't know what they meant by disqualified ballots. We had two individuals, elderly people, who sought absentee ballots and then died. Their votes were not counted. That's what he's talking about, deceased people voting. They were not counted. Felons not being treated equitably. The law sets forth how a felon is to be treated when he or she comes to vote after having done her time or his time and after having been released from any court supervision. That individual must come to the board and register to vote. The one that they're referring to was allowed to vote provisionally, but then they determined that he had not registered to vote. So his vote was not counted because he was not a registered voter. But because he attempted to vote and filled out the forms, he is now a registered voter, and I invite that man to come and vote in May of this year. Baza, I know that this was probably an honest mistake, but the tape that you received from Harding School, the tape that Mr. McKinney referred to, where they counted the number of people walking into the entrance, and there were less people than actually voted. First off, we secured the public records request that was made. The request was from Harding School for the tape commencing at 7 a.m. We all know that the elections start at 6:30 a.m., so we have a half hour of nobody walking in because we didn't have that on tape. Secondly, when you take a look at that tape, and unfortunately I couldn't get it to play on that laptop, there is a timer in the upper left corner. And I played that tape. I played it for a half hour timed on my cell phone. And in that half hour time period, or actually 15 minutes the first time, it showed 7 a.m., 7:24 a.m. in 15 minutes. The tape skips. So if it loses 38 minutes in an hour, that's a lot of people that can vote in that 38-minute period. And when I addressed it with Mr. Bray, he said, oh, that is a problem, the fact that we didn't have the correct times. That tape never would have come into evidence, and I don't believe that it had any evidentiary value whatsoever. Corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you all pretty much know that I'm very familiar with corruption. And if I believed that there was any corruption going on, and we had the Sheriff's Department involved in this, people would be prosecuted. I firmly am convinced that the Secretary of State can come in here, review the procedures held by the board. This Board of Elections has additional stopgap measures that are not required under the law. And I am firmly convinced Secretary of State will find that this Board of Elections will be given a clean bill of health. Do mistakes occur? Sure. Oh, that last thing I wanted to address. We sat down with every precinct worker that handled the absentee ballots for the nursing homes. And we interviewed every one of them. And not one of them could tell us that anybody from anybody's campaign assisted voters while they were voting. And in fact, they clear the room out of everybody but the voters. And I have yet to see an affidavit or a statement or anybody else that can tell me otherwise that they saw Mr. Brown's people or any other candidate's people assisting elderly people in casting their votes. I don't believe it ever happened. So, as far as I'm concerned, I welcome the Secretary of State to come here. I welcome him to give the board guidance and to tell the board what they are doing wrong, if anything, because I honestly believe that they're not going to find any issues. And I'm sorry, I am truly sorry that the Board of Elections did not have the opportunity to prove how fair and honest this election was in a court of law, as opposed to the rotunda of the courthouse with a media and a live stream.